What's up, everyone? It's the Autistic Scyther here, and as long as we've had stories, one thing's for certain: there's nothing more notable than a good villain. And basically, that one's true, as whether it's classic literature, fairy tales, TV shows, movies, or even video games. Yeah, we always love a good villain, whether it's we love them to hate them or love them to love them. Basically, that being said, what are the best video game villains out there? Well, that's why I'm here to find out. So, of course, it's time to count down the my top 10 favorite video game villains. And to be eligible for this list, they're basically they're basically from franchises that I've played. And, of course, one per franchise. So, without further ado, let's get started. Starting off first at number 10, we have Zoran Lazarevich from Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. And granted, considering how I've never mentioned Uncharted beforehand, really does say a lot once you consider that I had my work cut out for me when it came to those villains. And in fairness, Zoran Lazarevich stands out for being one of the most intimidating villains in the game. I mean, keep in mind, he is a Serbian war criminal who was kicked out of who was served in the Yugoslav wars, that basically was kicked out for being just brutal to anyone, being his own soldiers or even civilians, who eventually ended up taking an interest in a serum found in Shambhala that can grant immortality to whoever drinks it. And basically, throughout Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, it was Lazarevich that served the plot and was basically behind the scenes for the whole thing, since it was Nathan Drake's old friend Harry who got him to basically steal a map leading to Shambhala from a Turkish museum, but eventually ended up with Drake serving time behind bars because Harry decided to leave him holding the bag. And even with that, Lazarevich's presence just looms in the background. And when he eventually makes his appearance, he shows he means business, because he eventually shoots and kills Elena's cameraman, and right there in front of Nathan and Drake and Elena's eyes. Jesus! Yeah. And I haven't gotten him even for... However, that being said, he's at the bottom of this list because I haven't played all of Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. Namely because the tank level kinda stymied me. But in all fairness, Lazarevich is a solid start to this list. That says a lot. Moving on next at number 9, we have King Dedede from the Kirby franchise. Speaking of characters that most from a franchise that I recently got into, yeah, you gotta admit, when it comes down to it, King Dedede is one of the few that honestly serves as a solid villain. And not just because of the fact that thanks to the anime, yeah, I kinda see King Dedede as constantly being voiced by Ted Lewis. And that being said, even though he's been more of an unwilling unwitting ally to Kirby in recent years, DDD started off as a villain, naturally stealing food from Dreamland for himself. And really does say it. And Kirby having to basically face off against him in order to get it back. However, that being said, DDD has served a bit of an antagonistic role in many of the early titles. Kirby's Dream Land basically being one of them, due to him stealing the Star Rod and breaking it into 7 pieces, basically in order to prevent Nightmare from coming back. And heck, even in Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, he's basically an antagonistic presence to Kirby, preventing him from getting his hands on a Crystal Shard, because he wants it for his own. That being said, and even with that, he's still served a bit of a heroic bent. I mean, Triple Deluxe, he ends up getting kidnapped by Taranza, who thought of him as a hero who could help him save, in order to help him save Queen Sectonia. However, I gotta bring to mind Kirby and the Forgotten Land, because honestly, he got back to his villainy this is the best notability of his villainy. Not only with him joining the Beast Pack, but after losing to Kirby in his boss battle, he basically waits until they're done with their victory dance before capturing Elfalin. And honestly, he's one of the toughest to face off against. Although he still shows a more honorable side by throwing a Waddle Dee to Kirby in order to protect them from the Beast Pack. So, yeah. Honestly, guess that's what you get when you try to clobber that there Kirby. Oh man, that's awesome. Moving on next at number 8, we have Giovanni from Pokemon. Yeah. The fact that Pokemon is still pretty low says a lot. But Pokemon has a few interesting villains. Not so in the more recent entries, as they haven't been barely villainous. But in the beginning, they've had some villains that have stood the test of time. And while I consider Ghetsis, I don't like him. I don't like Ghetsis. That being so, honestly, I had to choose Giovanni since, when you think about it, he's your stereotypical Pokemon villain from the start. Not only being a mob boss, who more or less hides his identity from the entirety of the Kanto region due to being the Viridian City gym leader, but more often than not, he's one of your toughest opponents you face in Gen 1 alone. And his Pokemon really show how powerful he can be. Not just because of the fact that he uses ground types, being his type specialty, but he has some noticeably powerful Pokemon that are pretty tough no matter what game you see him in. From the likes of Nidoking, Nidoqueen, Rhydon, Kangaskhan, Honchkrow, which is a mob boss in itself, but of course, he's also known for having Persian, a Pokemon that he's had in the anime, which is basically your standard lap cat, almost similar to the likes of Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget, or Goldfinger. However, the one that really bumped him up here is Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, where a Giovanni that was successful in his plans of taking over Kanto ends up arriving in the universe of the Alola games to start and basically grabbing all the other successful evil team bosses in order to create a full-on collaborative evil team of Team Rainbow Rocket. And he has Mewtwo on his team. Mewtwo, the Pokemon he was looking to capture in his home games. This version of Giovanni actually captured. You gotta admit, that's pretty impressive. No bones about it. Moving on next to number 7, we have Manfred von Karma from Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. And honestly, when it comes down to the Ace Attorney franchise, I'm not one for visual novels. But I was wrong when I first played the Ace Attorney trilogy for the 3DS. Whew! And you gotta admit, when it comes down to it, honestly, a lot of Ace Attorney villains definitely tend to take the cake. However, Manfred von Karma basically stands ahead of the pack. Not only taking in Phoenix Wright's old friend Miles Edgeworth and basically teaching him everything he knows, but he basically even stands ahead and, but eventually throws him under the bus by framing him for a murder. In fact, he's seen as one of the most undefeated and ruthless prosecutors in the game, and he'll do anything to make sure that stays intact, and even using a taser to get crucial evidence from Phoenix Wright. Don't know how he wasn't thrown out. But the only reason he's done that, he does all this, is because of the DL6 incident where his spotless record was marred by Edgeworth's father. Yeah, he did this all out of revenge. Honestly, I think that allows him a spot on this list. Just, if you know, you know. Moving on next, at number 6, we have Edelgard von Hresvelg from Fire Emblem Three Houses. We've had mob bosses, corrupt prosecutors, there's kings and war criminals. How about a villain protagonist? And as much as the Three Houses discourse is interesting, yeah, Edelgard is one of the few Fire Emblem villains that basically stands above all the rest. And basically, if you decide to choose the Black Eagles when playing through Three Houses, yeah, you have a choice of joining her side or standing against her. And honestly, the fact that she does all this to try and unite Fodlan and get rid of the crest system, honestly, is one of the most interesting things out there. I'm not gonna go any further into Edelgard because of Three Houses discourse, but yeah, if you know, you know. That's all I gotta say. This will be continued in part 2.